And our next talk is actually very interesting as well. It is a topic we haven't covered before, so that's why it is very interesting. It is about skin health. And our speaker, first of all, I should actually say that unfortunately, she cannot make it. She has some internet issues, but she was kind enough to actually send us a recording, which we are going to play to you. And she's going to join us for Q&A. So if you have any questions, please write in the chat box. She is going to join us after the recording to answer your questions. So her name is Dr. Sonia Gandhi. She is a GP and a lifestyle medicine physician with a special interest in dermatology, skin issues. And her talk is titled Skin Deep. And I think we are going to play the recording now. Just give me a second. Yeah, it's coming on.
Thank you, Plant Powered Expo and plant-based health professionals, for inviting me to speak to you today about skin. The title of my talk today is Skin Deep, Scratching Beneath the Surface. My name is Dr. Sonia Gandhi, and I'm an NHS GP at a practice in Southwest London. I have a special interest in dermatology, and I'm also a certified lifestyle medicine physician working for the newly launched online service called Plant-Based Health Online. So, without further ado, I'm going to take you on a whistle-stop tour exploring what the skin is, what its function is, its anatomy, the role of vitamin D, sun and skin cancer, modern-day skin problems, and lifestyle modifications for healthy skin. So let's look at what skin is. It's the largest organ in the body, and it has a surface area of approximately 1.8 meters squared and weighs approximately 16% of the body's weight. What does skin do? Let's have a look at its function. Well, often when we think of skin, we often equate it with aesthetics, and whilst in 2018, the cosmetic industry was worth a staggering $507.8 billion US dollars. It's actually projected to be worth around $758.4 billion US dollars by 2025. Makeup and cosmetics have actually been ubiquitous throughout history, with the ancient Egyptians applying makeup not only to enhance their looks, but also for symbolic and ritualistic purposes. But aside from the aesthetic aspect of skin, it actually plays a significant and essential role in our health and well-being. It acts as a barrier against toxins, chemicals, and unwanted pathogens. It plays a crucial role in regulating our body temperature. It controls water loss. It is a sensory organ. It protects us against the sun's harmful rays, and it plays a critical role in vitamin D production. So let's now have a look at the anatomy of skin. Well, skin is essentially composed of 3 layers: the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis, which is also known as the subcutaneous or subcutaneous fat layer. The epidermis is further divided up into 4 layers, and the dermis plays host to sebaceous glands, which are just here, attached to hair follicles, sweat glands, blood vessels, and nerves. Let's look at the epidermis in a bit more detail. It's the outer covering, and as I've mentioned, it consists of 4 layers: the stratum corneum, the stratum granulosum, the stratum spinosum, and the stratum basale. The epidermis contains various different cell types. One of them is called the keratinocytes. These produce keratin, which is an essential component of hair and nails. It also provides physical protection and waterproofs the skin. There are also melanocytes in the epidermis. These produce melanin and provide skin its colour, and they also provide us protection against the sun. Langerhans cells are also found in the epidermis, and these are part of the immune system. They are the outermost sentinel of the immune system. They keep guard. There are also Merkel cells in the epidermis, which are involved in they have a sensory role involved in touch. The epidermis varies in thickness on differing body sites. So from most of the body, the epidermis measures about 0.1 millimeters, but on the palms and the soles, the epidermis can be in the range of 0.8 to 1.4 millimeters. The dermis lies immediately below the epidermis, and it consists of two layers, the papillary layer and the reticular layer. And the papillary layer contains nerve endings, and the reticular layer contains the collagen, elastin, hyaluronic acid. And together, the dermis provides structural strength to skin. It has all that supportive connective tissue within it. It contains the fibroblasts, which make the collagen, and elastin. It also, as I said, contains sebaceous glands, sweat glands, hair follicles, blood vessels, nerves, lymphatics, and it varies in thickness from 0.6 millimeters in the eyelids to 3 millimeters or more on the back, the palms, and the soles. And then we have the subcutis or the hypodermis layer, and this sits below the dermis. It is a loose layer, a layer of loose connective tissue and fat, and it acts as an insulator and attaches the skin to underlying fascia. Now, skin is not a static organ, it's a dynamic organ, so it changes as we age. When we're younger, the skin is smoother, thicker, and tighter. As we age, we then develop wrinkles, deep wrinkles. And as you can see in the dermis, there's an abundance of fibroblasts, an abundance of collagen, elastin, and hyaluronic acid. But as we age, you can see that there is a lack of these essential components that provide the skin its tensile and elastic properties. So what happens in the aging process? Well, it is based on intrinsic factors and extrinsic factors. So genetics, thinning of the skin, the presence of fine wrinkles, dry skin, telomere shortening. Telomeres are the caps that are found at the end of our chromosomes, and shortening of these contributes to the aging process. Also fluctuating hormone levels, particularly decreasing estrogen around the time of menopause, oxidative stress and mitochondrial dysfunction. These all lead to an impaired function of the skin barrier. Now, the extrinsic factors, these are essentially environmental factors that speed up the intrinsic aging process. These consist of pollution, smoking, alcohol, nutrition, impaired sleep, stress, and ultraviolet light. So now let's move on to look at sun, vitamin D, and skin cancer. Sun, is it our friend or is it our foe? Vitamin D, we've known since the 1920s that it plays a crucial role in bone health and preventing rickets. But we've also since then discovered that it regulates more than 200 genes, and it plays an important role in immunity, both in terms of infectious diseases and autoimmune conditions, such as rheumatological conditions, also in cardiovascular health. And there's actually ongoing research looking at its role in cancer. And vitamin D is not actually a vitamin, it's a prohormone that's produced in the sun, in the skin during exposure to sunlight. And it's particularly the UVB rays that it needs exposure to in order to be synthesized. You require around 10 minutes per day for paler skins, and around 25 minutes per day for darker skins, in order for the vitamin D to be synthesized. But the problem with countries like the UK that lie in northern latitudes is that during the autumn and winter months from October through to March, we just do not get enough UVB from the sun to activate this vitamin D synthesis. So that's why it's actually recommended that we should all be taking a vitamin D supplement. And as we've already mentioned, we know that vitamin D has a role in protecting us against infectious diseases, in respiratory infections. And whilst the data on COVID specifically is not yet conclusive, there is growing circumstantial evidence that it does have a significant role to play. So on one hand, we're told that we need more sun exposure for vitamin D activation, yet on the other hand, we're told to avoid the sun due to the risk of skin cancers. So it can be really, really confusing. And the rates of skin cancer have risen so significantly since the 1970s that melanoma is now the 5th most common cancer in the UK. And every year, approximately 15,000 people are diagnosed with melanoma. And the main risk factors for melanoma are UV exposure. And in fact, the Royal Marsden Hospital actually cite that significant sun exposure in childhood is the single most important lifestyle risk factor, and that blistering sunburn during childhood or young adulthood actually doubles the chances of developing melanoma later on in life. And then other risk factors are fair skin, genetics, immune deficiency, or a large number of moles. And with melanoma, we are really looking at these changes here, the A, B, C, D, asymmetry, if the molar lesion's looking asymmetrical, border, if it's got an irregular border, if there are any mixed colors or color changes, the diameter, particularly if it's 6 millimeters or above. Sometimes melanoma can be smaller, around 4 millimeters. Also, if the mole is evolving, if it's changed, if it's become itchy or bleeding or irritating, then these are all warning signs. The other type of skin cancer is the non-melanoma type. This consists of either the BCC, basal cell carcinoma, or the SCC, squamous cell carcinoma. And whilst this type of cancer, non-melanoma, are not metastatic, they can still cause significant localized destruction of the tissue. So can lifestyle play a role in skin cancer? Well, we know that sun protection is critical. So wearing a sunblock of an SPF minimum of 30 to provide protection against UVB rays. And also it should have a UVA rating, A is for aging, of 4 or 5. We should also be wearing a wide-brimmed hat in the summer, seeking the shade and avoiding the intense midday sun. And also there's been some research into looking at tomatoes, because tomatoes are rich in a chemical called lycopene. And studies in the last 2 decades have shown that eating tomatoes or tomato-derived products has shown that there's a decrease in sensitivity to UV light, and as a result, decreased sun-induced redness by around 40%. Now, there's also a role of vitamin B3, which is also known as nicotinamide. This plays a role in the repair of melanocytes. And studies in Australia have shown that vitamin B3 is safe and effective in reducing the rates of new non-melanoma skin cancers, such as SCCs or BCCs, and possibly they might play a role in the prevention of melanoma, but there is ongoing research in this. And whilst this is common practice in Australia, it's not quite common practice in the UK. So let's look at modern day skin problems. Let's have a look at acne first. Acne, it's really common. The worldwide prevalence is about 9.4%, and approximately 85% of adolescents are affected. And it takes up 3.5 million GP appointments each year. We think it's multifactorial. Genetics are involved, hormones, it's an inflammatory condition. Environment also has a role to play, particularly diet. And acne causes significant psychological distress, and it causes painful infection and scarring. So what happens in acne? Well, you can see from this slide here, this is a healthy sebaceous gland here. This is the pore, and this is known as the pilosebaceous unit, which contains the hair follicle. When there's an accumulation of sebum from the sebaceous gland and an accumulation of dead skin cells, known as hyperkeratinization, this blocks the hair follicle, it plugs it. And then you then get proliferation of the bacteria C. acnes, which results in inflammation. And just on the right-hand side here, you can just see the different types of acne pimples. This is a healthy pilosebaceous unit. This is a whitehead where the pore is sealed within the skin. An open comedo, or known as a blackhead, where the skin is open. Then you then get infection, and then you then develop the papule into a pustule. So let's look at the biochemistry, what's happening from a biochemical perspective in acne. Well, something called IGF, insulin-like growth factor, and this actually decreases something called FOXO1. When there's a decrease of FOXO1, there's an increased activation of something called mTORC1. Now, mTORC1 is involved in cell division and metabolism, but in acne, what happens is that mTORC1 leads to a production of excess sebum and hyperkeratinization, which is the dead skin cells. And then these then lead to the development of acne. Now, dairy and meat contain an amino acid called leucine, and leucine directly increases the activation of mTORC1, which again then feeds into this pathway, leading into a high incidence of acne. Also, having a diet that has high GI index, so high in sugars, and also in dairy, again increases circulating insulin, which then results in increased IGF-1, and increased IGF-1 also directly increases sebum production. It also increases the amount of circulating androgens, which again increase sebum production, again all feeding into the development of acne. Now, omega-3 fatty acids can help to lower the inflammation aspect of acne. So let's look at other causes or exacerbating factors of acne. Well, over-cleansing can be a problem. The use of hairstyling products, oils and serums, having a fringe, wearing hats and helmets, these can all contribute to something called forehead acne. We already discussed the role of processed foods, high sugar, high fat, and dairy. And mobile phones, these are teeming with pathogens. You know, they are a transmitter of bacteria. And also sweaty gym clothes. You know, if you work out and you don't change out of those sweaty gym clothes or have a shower, then that can also trigger the development or exacerbate acne, particularly on the back or the chest. So what are the treatments for acne? Well, it's dependent on severity. Traditionally, topical benzoyl peroxide, topical antibiotics, topical retinoids. In more severe acne, you might use oral antibiotics, and in females, Dianet. And in very severe acne, oral Roaccutane, which is prescribed in secondary care, or laser treatment, which tends not to be available on the NHS, but is available privately. Are there lifestyle measures that you can do to improve acne? Absolutely. We know that nutrition plays a significant role in our skin health. A whole food plant-based diet, which is rich in antioxidants, such as vitamin A, C, and E. These are all crucial for skin health. They also contain, a whole food plant-based diet also contains omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory. And citrus fruits, such as vitamin C, which are antioxidants, these also help stimulate collagen productions. And as we've alluded to, tomatoes, which contain lycopene, they are anti-inflammatory. Sweet potatoes and carrots, which are rich in beta-carotene, which is vitamin A, play a significant role. Avocados, walnuts, rich in vitamin E, very good for skin health. And dark leafy green vegetables contain a type of carotenoid called lutein, which is also an antioxidant. And we also know from studies that stress can exacerbate acne, so it's also important to employ techniques to manage your stress levels. So let's have a look now at dermatitis or eczema. Dermatitis is inflammation of the skin. We think in 50% of cases it's genetic due to a mutation of the filaggrin gene. 1 in 5 children suffer from it, 1 in 12 adults, and it causes severe itch, redness, and a rash. So what happens in dermatitis or eczema is that there's a breakdown of the skin barrier, and then you have immune changes due to these antigen invasions, again, resulting in the itch, rash, and infection. So triggers, are there triggers for eczema and dermatitis? Absolutely. Cow's milk allergy, protein in infants can be a trigger. Contact allergens, pollens, central heating, particular problem in the winter months. Air conditioning, a problem in the summer months. Clothing, such as wool. Food allergies, swimming in chlorinated water, house dust mites, hard water, and pollution can all be triggers. So what are the treatments? Well, exclusion of the trigger factor, if it's identifiable, the use of topical emollients, topical steroids, or immunomodulator creams such as Elidel or Protopic. And in more severe cases of eczema or dermatitis, we would use phototherapy or systemic medications such as methotrexate, azathioprine, cyclosporin, or biologicals. So are there lifestyle improvements for dermatitis? Absolutely, yes. Exclusion of the trigger allergen. And the most offending foods for dermatitis are cow's milk, eggs, soy, gluten, nuts, fish, and shellfish. Also washing powders, shower gels, soaps, all can be triggers for dermatitis, as we've already discussed. Clothing and hard water. Hard water increases the exposure of sodium lauryl sulfates in soaps and shower gels, which irritate the skin. And there's a trial called the SOFTER trial, which has been running by King's College and in conjunction with the St. John's Dermatology Institute, Guy's and St. Thomas's Hospital, and they're looking to see whether water softeners can have a role to play in the prevention of eczema. We also know that decreasing processed foods improves dermatitis, eczema, and having a diet that's rich in whole food plant-based diets, so including fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds, improves dermatitis. And also there's been some interesting studies from Korea looking at fermented foods such as kimchi which have also been shown to have a reduced incidence of dermatitis. So let's now move on to psoriasis. Psoriasis, it affects 2 to 3% of the global population. The peak onset of age is around 15 to 25 and 50 to 60 years of age. 30% of people with psoriasis also have psoriatic arthropathy, and there's an increased incidence of psoriasis with cardiovascular disease and diabetes, and also psoriasis is an autoimmune condition. It's inflammatory, it has a high cell turnover, and there is a genetic component to psoriasis. There's a family history in 40 to 50%, and 75% if the onset is less than 20 years of age. The lifetime risk of psoriasis is 4% if there's no family history, and 1%, 28% if one parent is affected, and if both parents are affected, then that risk goes up to 65%. Now, psoriasis has a huge social stigma attached to it, and we mustn't underestimate the mental health impact that psoriasis has on its patients and the decreased quality of life as a result. So as I alluded to, there is normally, normally the skin turnover is every 28 days. However, in psoriasis, this is sped up, so that the skin is turning over every 3 to 4 days due to an inflammatory response where the T cells trigger release of cytokine chemicals, resulting in redness, itchiness, scaliness, and plaques. And are there triggers for psoriasis? Absolutely. Stress, alcohol, smoking, infections, obesity, drugs such as ibuprofen, beta blockers, lithium, even injuries such as a cut or an abrasion or sunburn, and this is known as the Kubner phenomenon. These can all trigger psoriasis. So what are the treatments for psoriasis? Well, emollients, vitamin D analogues such as calcipotriol or calcitriol, tar preparations, and in severe cases we use phototherapy, oral systemic medications such as methotrexate, cyclosporin or acitretin, and also biologicals such as the TNF blockers. So are there improvements that you can do through your lifestyle for psoriasis? Absolutely, indeed. There's an abundance of evidence showing that a whole food plant-based diet can help. Decreasing stress will help. Exercise, increasing your exercise will help improve psoriasis, as will reduction and elimination of alcohol and the cessation of smoking. So just a couple of thoughts as the presentation comes to an end. I hope I have shown to you that through lifestyle improvements such as sleep, which is important for the repair and regeneration of skin cells, it decreases cortisol levels, improves hydration, maintaining a healthy weight because obesity alters the skin barrier, by increasing the amount of exercise we do and maintaining physical activity because this slows down aging, reducing our stress levels because this decreases inflammation, stopping smoking because of the association with oxidative stress, watching our environment in terms of sun protection, pollution, hard water, decreasing or eliminating alcohol because this decreases inflammation, and a whole food plant-based diet that's rich in antioxidants such as vitamin A, C, E, omega-3s, lycopene, lutein. All of these are such important aspects of our lifestyle which help in ensuring that we have healthy skin, because skin is the outer reflection of our inner health. Thank you very much. And I just have some references here for you. if you wish to have a look at these. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Oh, that was very interesting. And we are very lucky because Sonia has actually joined us, so she can answer your questions. Sonia, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you see me? Yes.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
I really glad
Change
that
of clothes.
make it to the Q&A.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting talk. Thank you. So I'm just going to start with the questions. The first one is, where was it? Yes. What about prickly heat rash?
So prickly heat is actually a rash that tends to come on in conditions of heat and sweating, so hot, humid environments. And it tends to be a rash that it presents with itch, redness, it's a severe itch, little bump, so it looks prickly, that's why it's given the name prickly heat. The actual dermatological name is Malaria rubrum. As I said, it tends to come on when the skin is occluded, so the sweat glands, they can't quite function properly, so it becomes a hot, sweaty environment. So certain clothes might precipitate it. You know, if you're wearing something that just doesn't let the heat or your sweat transmit easily, that could be a trigger factor. With regards to sort of lifestyle improvements for prickly heat, I mean, really, you want to try and keep the area exposed if possible, wearing light, cool clothing, you could use something to cool the skin. But the mainstay of treatment really is using a topical steroid cream, something like hydrocortisone. But it tends to resolve. It's nothing. It's not a chronic condition. It's not anything life-threatening or insignificant. It's annoying and it can be painful, but it's easily treatable.
Thank you. That was good. So last question. Well, actually, I have one question myself, but one question from the audience. You mentioned that vitamin C helps to stimulate the production of collagen. Are there any other foods you would suggest?
I mean, really, just having a whole food plant-based diet will ensure that you're getting all the antioxidants that you need, not just for healthy skin, but just general good health. But as you know, skin is an outer reflection of our inner health. So if we are eating in a healthful way, that will manifest. But I mean, there's an abundance of foods that have vitamin C. I mean, mainly it's like the citrus fruits, kiwis have vitamin C, and there's so many foods out there that have got that come as packages that don't just have one vitamin, but they have other, several vitamins in them. So the aim really is to try and ensure that you're eating the rainbow every day, and trying to eat at least 30 to 40 different varieties of fruit, plant-based foods in a week. And that's really the healthiest way, and making sure you're drinking lots of water as well, because things like alcohol and caffeine, these can actually dehydrate the skin, so you really want to keep the skin hydrated. So a combination of having a good varied whole food plant-based diet will ensure that you're going to get enough vitamin C in there to have good collagen production and healthy skin.
Yeah, and I think it is really good, because when you get your vitamin C from foods, as you said, it comes packed with other nutrients. So it's not just one single vitamin. So you get a rainbow. You get a lot of different nutrients. That's really good. Thank you. And we don't really have a lot of. Well, there is one more question. Which sunscreen lotion would you recommend, and which factor? That's the last question, by the way, from the audience. Okay, go on.
So sunscreen, really you want to go for a minimum of SPF 30. There isn't much difference between 30 and 50 in terms of the percentage protection that you're going to get. It's just a couple of percent more, So SPF 30 is fine. I said it's just 2 or 3% difference in terms of protection you'll get from the sun, but 30 is fine. There's I don't have any allegiances to any particular brands. I think you just have to find something that suits your skin, that also has a UVA rating of at least 4 or 5 stars on it as well. And I guess it depends on the activity you're doing. I mean, if you're going to be going into a swimming pool, or you want to make sure that it's waterproof, it doesn't wash off straight away either. So it's just finding the right brand for you, and if you've got sensitive skin. But there's an abundance of sun lotions out there. I think if you go to any reputable pharmacy. They'd be able to point you in the right directions, but I don't have any particular allegiances to any particular brand per se. It's just a matter of personal choice, really, finding the one that suits you.
Thank you. And the last question is from me. We talk about the importance of having vitamin D, and we know actually if we don't take the supplements, we get it from, sun exposure. But at the same time, as you mentioned in your talk, actually, sun exposure is one of the main reasons for skin cancer. So how can we juggle that? How can we actually make sure that we get enough, but not too much?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's such a tricky one to answer, because on one hand, as I mentioned, it's really confusing. On one hand, we're told we need sun exposure to get our vitamin D production, but on the other hand, we're worried about the development of skin cancer. And really, for paler coloured skins, you only really need 10 minutes exposure, and that's not necessarily 10 minutes of sunbathing. This is just 10 minutes of just, you're out and about, you're walking in a park, just some sun exposure on your face or your arms or your hands, just for 10 minutes. For darker skin, you need about 25 minutes. I think, if you're beyond that, then obviously you might want to think about making sure you're wearing sun protection and taking sensible precautions. You don't want to necessarily be in the direct sun's rays. Seek shade, wear a wide brimmed hat, don't put on that tanning oil because you don't want to burn the skin actively. So I know it's a really conflicting one. It's really confusing. There isn't a clear-cut answer. But I think it's about being sensible. You just do not want your skin to burn. You do not want it to get red. So sort of just walking down the street in the park for 10 minutes without any sunblock, should be sufficient for you to get enough. If you're pale skinned, if you're darker skinned, you need 25 minutes. But, as you know, we live in a country that lies in the northern latitude, and for 6 months of the year, we just do not get enough sun exposure here. So you need to really supplement during those 6 months. Everybody should be. That's the advice. Everybody should be supplementing.
Yes, vegan or non-vegan. I think, that's,
yeah. Irrespective of your diet, everybody should be supplementing between October and March.
Thank you. That was really great. And I know you post quite a lot about, skin issues. Where do you post? Where can people find you?
So you could find some of my posts on the Plant-Based Health Online Facebook page. And also, if you want to find out more, please do look us up on Plant-Based Health Online. And also there's some amazing resources on plant-based health professionals as well. So just have a look there. I am on Instagram and Facebook as well as Dr. Sonia Gandhi. So you can find me there as well.
Thank you. That was really useful. Thank you so much for today. And I think Tim is going to join us now. Tim.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, yes. Hello, Leila. Sonia, hello. I've been listening intently.
It's wonderful.
Yes, especially the last two talks, actually.
They were new. They were something different, weren't they? So we haven't had them before.
There's a very nice sunblock of you there.
You should have told me that before.
Mineral-based, zinc oxide.
Fantastic.
With nice vegan, obviously not tested on animals. It's a good 25 SPF 25. But there's no chemicals in there. It's just zinc oxide. So it makes it quite a thick paste.
Yeah.
But it's pretty good. It's got a UVA equivalent of 3-star, I think. So it's a 25 3.
Okay.
I must admit, I'm one of these people who doesn't wear sunblock. Actually, I was brought up in Greece. So just sort of hung out in the sun for like 14 hours a day, pretty much, without much clothes on. Some clothes, obviously, but
in those days, you probably weren't having. You were moving. You're not lying like the way it's the concept. No.
I like sunbathing actually. Lying in the hot sun at like 40 degrees. In a hot sun, 35, 40 degrees is my idea of a very nice pleasant way to spend the afternoon. I know, it's shocking, really.
It's a
Can't
good
wait for the sun to get out and do everything the opposite of what you said, really. But to be honest, as I get a bit older, and obviously, you know, as you do get older, first of all, you pay attention more generally. You listen to your body, hopefully, more because you're aware of some of the deterioration naturally.
Yeah.
But you do listen to the sort of common sense a little bit more, and the science is obviously points to. So I think what you said is really true. Is a bit, you know, to get some fresh air and get your sunlight on your body is really important. But to really overexpose.
Yeah.
I'm lucky I don't burn at all, so I could quite happily lie in the sun for a few hours.
Yeah.
Quite happy, more than quite happy.
I think the other aspect of that is that, you know, people's lifestyles we are kind of unhealthier, aren't we? Perhaps 40 years ago, from a lifestyle perspective, your family would have had healthier habits, and we don't realize that actually has an impact on our immune system. So, you know, there's that balance. Even like what you're consuming can actually protect you against the sun, like lycopene in tomatoes. That can have, that's been now shown in studies that it has a protective effect against sun red burning erythema. So, you know, I think there's a lot behind. It's complicated. You know, one you can't.
Is the advice you have for people? I know you mentioned it, sort of fair-skinned people, perhaps 10 minutes. People, Asian people, maybe 25 minutes. What about if you're a black person? You know, if you've got very, very black skin, does that make a further difference? Would that be
so?
The
darker you are, obviously, you're better protected against the sun because you've got the melanin protecting you. But having said that, black people and Asian people, they can get melanomas. It's not that it doesn't happen in them. It's just very rare, but it can happen. So because it's the sun's rays, it's ultraviolet radiation, you know. So if you've got too much of it, it can burn you. But in terms of vitamin D absorption, the darker you are, the longer you need to be in the sun to get the absorption of the sun's rays to activate the vitamin D. So it's not the same for everybody. It depends on what color. And it doesn't matter on ethnicity either. That's another misnomer. People think, you know, if you're like black or Indian or Arabic, you know, that you're all one category, but you're not. Within those ethnicities, you've still got subcategories of coloring tones. You know, there'll be people who are Asian, but they could be extremely fair-skinned, or they might be darker-skinned within that. I mean, you just look at a country like India, you know, you've got such a variety in skin colouring. So it's not a homogenous cohort of people. It depends on your actual skin colour rather than your ethnicity. Does that make sense? Yeah.
It's really interesting, and I think.
But my son, he's really pale skinned. I mean, I'm Indian, and he's so white. He's paler than I am, and he burns. You know, if he's not covered in sunblock, he will go red. He'll burn. So from that way perspective, his skin behaves as if it's a Caucasian skin. Whereas, you know, I've got other family members who are much darker, and they don't have problems with sun. They don't burn. You know, they can stay out a lot longer and not wear sunblock and get away with it. But I think also the ozone layer, there's a problem with that now as well. You know, the breakdown of the ozone layer, I guess due to climate change and how we've been living on this planet, that protective layer in the atmosphere has now gone as well. So we're more exposed to the harmful radiation.
Yeah, it is really, you know, a complex issue, isn't it? It's not just a one aspect, and we just do our best with what we have available, you know, and try to optimize it.
So I didn't go into that in detail in the talk, because I just wanted to do an overview of a lot of different skin conditions. I just touched on it, but perhaps I should have gone into it in a bit more depth. I don't know. But anyway.
It's really interesting to just talk about it and perhaps broach that subject and encourage people to, you know, go to the resources you mentioned, the Plant-Based Health Professionals website, and to consider these aspects, especially about the balance. And I'm sure you both agree that underpinning it, the one thing we can do is always, is that seeking that whole food rainbow plant-based diet, unprocessed, good exercise, mental health, good lifestyle approaches, positive thinking is really important, especially when you're, combating mental health issues and whole aspects of our modern day living, which, as you say, is so conflicted these days. There's so many different considerations, as it were. But the one underpinning one is that whole food rainbow raw food diet. I would say, having listened to the raw talk, I've been raw 3 times in my life. I went raw in 1990, in the year 2000, and again in the year 2010. Both the last 2 times actually have been paying attention to all those aspects mentioned in the talk. Even so, I did get I lost a lot of weight, a lot of strength, felt quite under-energized. I think it's important you should pay attention to your own body, and perhaps this comes to the same with skin and sun, and you listen to your own body and what that's saying, and not necessarily fight against it. If you come into a better balance, that you think, rather than being dogmatic and holding on to a set of rules, is to be flexible. And I think with the raw diet, I would certainly say from experience of over 3 decades, you have to be careful, definitely be careful, for a long period. Although I do know people, like Kate Magic, been raw 25 years, brought up 3 kids, raw, really successfully, really healthily. So it certainly suits, some people. But again, it was a really interesting talk to listen to. And Layla, thank you for putting together such a fabulous lineup an afternoon, and so accessible and relevant, so detailed but easy to access and understand. It's been a pleasure to listen to. And,
thank you for having us.
Thank you.
It's been great, and all your members, all your people. I know you've got a big team there participating, and it's growing. We've had some really amazing sessions over the last 6-7 months,
Yes.
and always a popular viewing for people. I think very, 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 very positive development that we've seen over the last 18 months. There's a real growth of the plant-based health professionals. And of course, the plant-based, just tell us a little bit before we end up, which I know we're going to do in about 1 minute, because we're just about hit 6 o'clock. Later, the new development, which is the plant-based health online, where you can go and actually seek sort of one-to-one professional consultations now. Is that?
Yes, you can actually kind of, if you look us up, and Sonia is part of it, I'm part of it, and Laura Freeman, so we are, and Jennifer Fernandez, who was here earlier. So we are a team of plant-based healthcare professionals. We are advocating lifestyle first, and it is, yes, as you mentioned, one-on-one. So you get, your private consultation, and you can really focus on nutrition, how to, improve it. So it is for people who are already following a vegan diet and they want just, they have health issues. There is actually, we have different specialties as well. Like, Sonia is obviously covering skin issues, and we have Lisa Simon, fertility. So it is, we are actually a nice group of different specialties. So have a look, and you can book a 10-minute free inquiry call. So that is good, just to get an idea what we offer and if you want to book an appointment. So
that's great. Layla, I think we'll post those details in the Facebook. So keep an eye out for that. But we'll also, somebody in our team will be doing a MailChimp shortly.
Lovely.
To find some time to do it. So we get that done. But that's going out actually next week. There'll be a whole MailChimp about the new developments from the plant-based health professionals. So that's just great. Again, thank you. Thank you to Shireen and to all the participants. And for all your supporters too, all the people who've been supporting. I think we've got a growing membership. I think Shireen mentioned earlier, 700 members now. That is really impressive. So we'd love to see that go and keep growing. I think the next time we see you is in our magazines.
Yes, hopefully. Looking forward to that.
We'll
Thank
be
you.
looking forward to it. Great.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.